event as well. So on the left-hand corner, you can see that it's recording, and you can also see that we're live on Facebook. If any of those go off, someone please let me know in the chat. Real quick, as people are still coming on, just want to remind everyone about the bottom portion of the screen. And this Zoom meeting is set up like a city council or a board of supervisor meeting. So participants' pictures won't be shown. You'll just see the lovely panelists on the side that will be presenting to you tonight and facilitating the conversation. So we're going to give everyone about 1 more minute as more people jump on. If people want to practice raising their hand and lowering it just to make sure they know how to do that, you can go to the, there you go, Cindy, you're a pro. Some of you guys are really good at this. Awesome. I see you doing it. Denise, if you guys want to practice, that's perfectly wonderful. Mary, great job. I see your hand up. All right, so with that, we're gonna get started on this meeting. We're not gonna wait too long because there's just so many amazing things to talk about. This is the Beachfront Park Master Plan update. This is the community meeting where we're presenting alternatives to our wonderful community. So the city and our design team can get feedback from you on the alternatives. And this project is made possible by funding from the California Coastal Conservancy. So we're very grateful for them and their support. Wonderful. So welcome to this. And we just want to take a moment. We'd like to acknowledge that this is the traditional territory and homelands of the Taloha people. And this has been an important component for the city to really engage them in this design process and acknowledge their history and celebrate the wonderful indigenous culture that they are and what they can bring to this. And our hope is to continue to partner with them as we move into future projects and we create a wonderful, healthy community together. So real quickly about Zoom and what we're going to do tonight, there's various ways to participate in the beginning of this. First, we're going to be having polls throughout the presentation and the meeting. There's going to be the chat box on the bottom that you can chat with. You can ask questions. We'll get to them as best we can. If we don't get to your question, don't worry. We're going to pull off all the questions and then answer them via Facebook or a post to the city website. And then there'll be an opportunity after the presentation for public comment. That's really why we're here. So you can raise your hand at that point and we'll call on you. You just have to unmute yourself in the lower left-hand corner. Then after it, we're going to give you a link to a survey. A survey can be filled out by an individual, a family group, a classroom, or any group that uses the park. We want as much feedback as possible. And then at any time, you can email me, hwent@crescentcity.org, and I will forward questions and comments to the design team. So how did we get here? Many of you have been part of this process. This process has been going on for over a year now. We started off getting feedback on the previous master plan and getting feedback on what you liked and what you didn't like. We were at First Fridays. We were also at town hall meetings and we did focus groups and interviews. And right now you're going to see that this poll is up and you are more than welcome to let us know if you were part of previous events or not. And with that, we'll go to the next screen. So we reached out to the community. You can see some of the people we reached out to. We reached out to Sunset High School, the Disc Golf Club, Elk Valley Rancheria, Taloha Dene Nation. We went and hung out with the seniors at the Del Norte Senior Center. We got information from the Child Care Council. We went and discussed this opportunity with New Dawn, who supports adults with developmental disabilities and physical disabilities. We reached out to as many community partners as we could, in addition to the town hall meetings and information we received earlier. So we got a lot of feedback in the very beginning part of this. And right now it looks like 64% of you have been part of the process that got to us to where we are today. And an exciting new 36% of you are here with us today. So thank you for being part of this. Thank you for showing up if you're new, and we're excited to share with you what we've done for those of you that have been with us. And what we found out leading up to this time, there were some key features that everyone in the community wanted. A bike park, an amphitheater, green areas, more amenities at Kids Town, more areas to walk, bike, and run, food year-round. We all like really good opportunities for food in Delaware County. Volleyball courts, labyrinths, and there's a lot more things that were requested. These are just some of the key highlight ones. But this is what came to us. And from there, we went out and we tried to find the best design team possible. We did a bunch of interviews, and we're so lucky to have with us today to present their design alternatives, PGA Design.
Thank you so much, Holly. Good evening. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Kathy Garrett. I'm president of PGA Design. We're a firm of landscape architects with 4 decades of experience designing parks and collaborating with communities like yours. And I'd like to introduce my collaborator tonight as well, project manager Mark Wessels, also from PGA Design. So tonight we have a rich array of ideas for Beachfront Park to discuss, and we're very eager to hear your thoughts. There are 3 design schemes which we'll go through, and they're organized thematically. Each one is focused around a theme, but they also accommodate the range of program elements that Holly's already mentioned and a few more I'm about to mention. So they're organized as to the themes of culture, recreation, and nature. And they all, share this spectrum of program elements, but they're dealing with them in different priorities. And so that's what we're really looking to seek your input on. In addition, each scheme has some things which are unique to that scheme, and we'll look at those too. So the program elements that are shared by all schemes, I'd like to just mention them up front because that way we can be a bit more nimble when we go through each of the options. So all 3 have enhanced entries, both a primary and a secondary entry, and a better way of wayfinding and signage in the park. Accessible pedestrian circulation. We have a range of trees, actually trees and vegetation, plantings and diversity. Native species came up a great deal in the community engagement meetings. And really that is something that there are many opportunities for in this park, of course. Enhanced access to the beach, recognition and celebration of the homelands of the Tolowa people and culture. And really, we see this as an opportunity to strengthen the voice of local members of the Tolowa Deni Nation and the Elk Valley Rancheria, and to be very authentic and inclusive and representational about it. There are also interpretive and educational signage opportunities. We might tell the story of history or natural history, important people or events. Place for outdoor performances, a focal plaza or town square for the town to come together and celebrate. There might be things like civic events or parties, food truck events or special occasions. We are also looking to gather the existing and add new memorials to the park in a discrete area. And currently there is the SS Emilio, there's the Billy Boone Memorial, the Cannon, and then the sorts of things that may be added are addressing really the Tolowa history of massacres and recognizing that and allowing it to be known. We're also looking at improving kids' play environment by upgrading the existing Kids Town and adding new play opportunities for kids of all ages. At the moment, there's parking in the park. Some of it could be improved in terms of circulation and organization and efficiency. There's also new parking coming along Front Street, and we would be looking to ensure that there's both sufficient quantity and that it's clear and efficiently laid out. There's a range of picnic areas with different characters. Some have tables and seating, others are protected from the sun, some might be protected from the wind, others might be completely informal and really more in the grassy areas. All schemes have 5 soccer fields. That's for the under 15s, the 12s, the 10s, the 8s, and the 6s. So we've got the kids pretty well covered, and in conversation with the soccer groups of the town, we've really looked to tailor that. Also courts for volleyball, basketball, and pickleball. Outdoor cooking facilities, especially near the playfields and courts. Improving the flow and safety of the disc golf course. It's really an extraordinary asset of the park, and we're looking to, of course, retain it, but also improve it. Courts for horseshoes, bocce, and possibly petanque. A kayak launch, a kite flying area, a dog park, which of course is there, but we're looking to integrate it. And a new bike park, which would also be integrated, but in different ways in the different schemes. Exercise equipment for adults integrated with running and walking paths in the park, opportunities for climbing like bouldering, a labyrinth, and perhaps most importantly, but maybe not the most apparent, is we're looking to utilize the existing infrastructure, use the assets of the park that already exist, and to use them effectively and to add to them in a way that integrates the overall design of the park. And while we're at the sort of overall thinking, integrating sustainability into the design, whether it's energy use, stormwater management, recycled materials, lighting that's both energy efficient and respectful of dark skies. There's a range of things that we'll be looking at. At the moment, there's one bathroom in the park. We're looking to add more. And also to use the assets of the park and to recognize them and integrate them into the design, like long views to the water, or perhaps to create new, more inward-looking protected views of various parts of the park, where it serves both active and passive use play. We'll be retaining the existing Howe Drive Park that's on the ocean side of Howe Drive. And we're also, of course, be looking to connect Beachfront Park to the greater context, the shoreline and the region as a whole. So that's what all the schemes do. But now we'd like to drill down a little bit and talk about each one. So here are the three: culture focus, recreation focus, and nature focus. And as I said, there are some unique things to each one, but also there's an alteration of priorities in each one. I'm going to start with culture focus, and then Mark Wessels will address the recreation and nature focuses. So to take you on a walk through the park as seen through the focus of culture. Really at the core of this option is culture and the arts. And it's our intention to be representative of the cultures of the region, who's living here and who has lived here over the years, the centuries, and the millennia. Starting with the longest time frame, of course, the stories of the Tolowa Dene people and events, and in more recent times, perhaps up to the Japanese sister city and the story of the boat, and it's finding the cultures of the city today, both Latino and Hmong and other cultures, and then reflecting a little bit on the builders of the city, and then stories of the tsunamis and how they shaped the community. And in fact, they are the reason that Beachfront Park exists today after the 1960s tsunami. So I'm going to start by walking through the park, and I'm actually going to start at this upper right-hand corner where that number 12 is, which is the main entry to the park, where there'll be a park sign, a plaza, some trees identifying the entry, and flags also identifying it. And this is using one of the park entry drives that exists today. And the cultural core really begins here. It really hosts a gathering of spaces, interpretive signage, memorials, and they're collected along a special path, which we're identifying here with this little white hatch. And if you can follow it, it leads through a portion of the park. There are many paths in the park, but there's some that we're actually designating as part of this cultural core. And along that path, it'll be identified by having a patterned border, and we're looking to integrate one of the richly imprinted Tolowa graphics and to use it as a wayfinding element and also to help describe where the cultural core is. And it leads past a series of important elements. So we're thinking of this path as the path of the people, a history and a memory, and to enliven the elements that are encountered as you travel along that pedestrian path. So the patterns that we're thinking of using these Tolowa graphics, which are so wonderful in terms of their visual appearance, they can be used on the edge of the path, but they could also be used on vertical surfaces and perhaps on larger scale built elements such as the structure that we'll see in just a moment, but it's identified here at number 21 by the water. So if you're traveling along that path, you encounter a number of elements. As you pass the visitor center, there are picnic areas, and then to the pool, a more clearly defined parking area, and it leads you to a circular area. And if you see number 23 and number 7, that zone there, which is generally clear, identifies a location where there are clear sight lines both out to the water and into the park. And at the center of it is number 24, which is really a dance circle and dance platform. And as well, there's a number of picnic structures outboard of that towards the water, so that you can have some protection from the weather, but also enjoy being in close proximity to both Elk Creek and the ocean. So continuing on, you come to the main plaza of or town square of this alternative. We're calling it Seaport Plaza, and it's on both sides of Stamps Way, and it offers opportunities for civic events, perhaps setting up of food trucks and parties, celebrations of pastels in the park on the pavement. And it's flanking Stamps Way and is right at the waterfront. And you can see there number 22 as well. It gives an opportunity to have a new ramp access to the beach. So we've got the existing stair access at the end of Stamps Way, and we're adding a ramp access so that there's additional means of getting down there, especially if you're in a wheelchair or on crutches and so on. So this plaza at Seaport Plaza, as we're thinking of it, on the left-hand side has this large-scale trellis, and it might be a great place to set up a farmer's market or food trucks, and it faces the ocean and faces the plaza. But likewise, it also provides a face to an amphitheater area. And if you see number 19, that's a stage facing the ocean, so if there's a music event or movies in the park, the sound will be projected out to the ocean. And the seating there for the amphitheater is informal. There are some areas where it'll be built seating and other areas where it'll be sloped lawn, and there are some trees for shade, but it has a generally informal feel to it. But it would be a great place to go to watch, as I said, movies in the park, perhaps school plays, might be a vivid light show, or other performances or concerts. So as we're traveling along this white marked path, it also leads to number 4 and number 5. You can see in a large lawn clearing, and they are the Tolowa plank structure, really a replication of that to use for educational interpretive uses. And then the number 5 identifies Tolowa stools, which are hourglass shaped stools. We're seeing them being cast in concrete rather than carved out of redwood, but to emulate redwood so that they're both durable and effective, and elements that should be familiar to all of us, but perhaps are familiar to not all that know the area. And also, of course, there'll be visitors to this park from beyond the area, and so to help share that knowledge of the local history. So one of the things that came up in the community discussions was the value and interest in trees and massings. And you can see in this scheme, there's significant massings of trees. They'll help buffer the wind, and they'll help define spaces. It's opportunities for a range of diversities for enhanced habitat, and looking at using both native and climate adapted species. Species also of cultural utility and interest. And so the masses of trees that you see here will carry those elements. And we can drill down later in the question and answer period if we want to know more about that. The other thing that we've got here is looking for, and it's identified with number 3 here, which is near 4 and 5, the ethnobotanical plantings for education and interpretation, and perhaps guided seasonal tours of plantings useful to the Tolowa. So that takes us to, if you sort of zoom out in your mind's eye and think about the layout of this overall park master plan, and think about circulation. So as I said, we would look to reuse infrastructure. And so Stamps Way, of course, is there, as is Play Street. We're using both of them. And we're continuing Play Street on with this new pedestrian promenade, which is central to the park and we're seeing is called the Crescent. It leads to a covered picnic area, which would serve the ball fields that you can see in the upper left, and also the smaller courts that you can see just to the lower right of that area. There would be at number 10 a new bathroom, and actually there's another number 10 at the other end of the crescent. And so you get to see that this important organizing element of the pedestrian circulation. There are some other key connections to town. You can see vertically running from Howard Drive north towards Front Street on the right side of the crescent, and then also another one past the marine mammal museum there, not museum, but the Marine Mammal Center, rather. And it has a jog in the path as it continues up towards town. Both ends of the crescent are anchored by this double avenue of trees, so we've got this sense of robust presence of trees. And of course, they'll be sequestering carbon, which is great from a sustainability point of view. Continuing on, so I've focused primarily on the cultural core of this scheme. The scheme includes all the other elements that have been mentioned, and I'm going to move fairly swiftly through some of those. The picnic areas in front of the small courts has a large lawn area. There are snapshots of views out to the water, but it's more enclosed for more protection from the weather. Of course, the Marine Mammal Center at number 26. And then as you move around looking at number 16, that would be where the bike park is. And the bike park, it's shown fairly simply by an area identified for it, but it would accommodate a pump track, slope style line, and skills trail, and really be a place for the whole family. The dog park is located in the area that's the lobe described by number 15. And then you can see the soccer court, the soccer fields at the upper portion there, making the loop back. So in terms of small courts, if you continue on towards the east, you'll also see some additional small courts, horseshoes, bocce perhaps, and then a circular labyrinth there. And that brings us to the area where there's around the existing parking, which again has been clarified, retaining the existing kids' town and improving it, expanding to bigger kids and more diverse ranges of play, and a memorial boat plaza there, but also that could be a play environment for kids to clamber and climb on around a range of picnic facilities also in that location. Which brings us back to the beginning, and with that, I'm going to hand it to Mark Wessels to discuss the recreation focus.
Thanks, Kathy, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm going to discuss the other two options, which are recreation focus and nature focus. So to begin with the recreation focus, Crescent City is already a recreational destination for Del Norte County and for Northern California. And it has so many great recreational features adjacent to it, from the national parks to mountain biking trails, hiking trails, as well as water recreation. So this scheme aims to make Beachfront Park a rich recreational hub that serves both residents of Crescent City as well as visitors to the city. So it's always trying to balance the needs and in every way maximize recreation in the park. So to begin on the left side of the plan, this option shows a large bike park that has a pump track, slope style line, as well as a skills trail that traces around the edge of this bike park. Also integrated into that bike park are seating areas and picnic areas so that family members of bicycle users can hang out in this bike area and overlook kids or other family members doing bike activities. Right next to that is a dog park surrounded by a wooded area. And next to that is shown by number 2 here is a picnic area, which we could see as serving this bike area, the dog park area, as well as adjacent businesses across the street. Just south of this at the number 20 is an overlook hill. So this hill would be 20 feet tall. It would allow you to get up high and have incredible views out to the bay, as well as prospect to look across all the recreational features in the park. This hill's also at the end of this main pedestrian circulation path that cuts down all the way to Play Street. So even if you're entering the park here, that hill would draw your eye into this recreationally rich section of the park here, and it would invite you to walk down into that portion of the park. One really interesting element in this that ties all of these pieces together is the number 17 on the plan. And that is one long, continuous trail that loops the park. It would be a bicycle and pedestrian trail that connects into the existing coastal trail. And that entire loop is approximately 1 mile in length. So we think this could be a really nice feature for park users to go for a jog or to go for a walk with friends or a bike ride with your kids, and you could go on this loop around the whole park. The soccer fields are shown here, as well as some small courts at number 18 and number 4. Once again, these courts are basketball, volleyball, pickleball, and horseshoes and bocce. Here on Stamps Drive, we're proposing a double row of trees surrounding a pedestrian path, like what's shown in this photo. And that would provide a connection into downtown, as well as provide opportunities for passive recreation for people to walk and to sit in this area. At the main entrance to the park here on Front Street, we're proposing a large beachfront park sign that would speak to visitors of the park and indicate that this is really where your experience of the park begins if you're visiting from out of town. Also at this location, we're proposing a memorial grove and plaza immediately in front of the visitors center. And this is where those memorials from the park, as well as additional memorials and wayfinding signage and interpretive signage would be located. So really, it puts up front and center a lot of the information that we want to share with visitors to the park. Moving from the visitors center towards the pool, there's a clearing area where there's a Taloa slab house, as well as a dance platform. And beyond the pool, we have this pool parking, which is reconfigured to be a little bit more efficient. There's also 90-degree parking on both sides of Play Street. Throughout this scheme and all the schemes, we aim to provide ample parking in the park and also to use space efficiently for that parking so that we have the maximum space available for other park features. There's a second picnic area here at this corner of the park with views out to Elk Creek and out to the bay, some small picnic structures at that location. And then here along Stamps Way, we have this Celebration Plaza, number 3. That would be a large paved plaza that could be used for community events, outdoor dance parties, and the 4th of July, roller skating. We see that as a real kind of gathering place for the community in this scheme. And just below that at number 19 is the amphitheater area. So in this scheme, the amphitheater is kind of the most built and the most constructed. It shows a covered stage as well as seating, accessible seating for visitors. And the idea of this is that this could be used both for residents of Crescent City and also for larger events where we're inviting a larger group of people into the park for a movie night or an interpretive talk or a dance performance or school play. The final element I want to touch on in this scheme is recreation on the water. So one of the huge resources that you have here in Crescent City and at Beachfront Park is Elk Creek and the bay and the Pacific Ocean. And in this recreation scheme, we wanted to offer water-based recreation and integrate that with the park. So what we're showing here is an accessible kayak launch, a water sport launch and rental area, a place where visitors could rent kayaks or take a windsurfing lesson, and also a place where locals can get access to the water. So this means both providing ADA access to the beach and also providing launches so that people can get into the water itself. With that, I'm going to move on to the nature focus, and we will have time for questions following this. So once again, starting on the left with the bike park shown in the same general area, we have a large pump track as well as a slope style area. And in this scheme, the skills track for the bike course is actually spread out around the park. So the bike park connects in with this bicycle trail. It could also be used by pedestrians, bicycle and pedestrian trail, that goes all the way around the park here, connecting back into this central path. And well, one section of this, the section closest to parking and to the street, would be paved and would be fully accessible for people with limited mobility, people in wheelchairs. Also, there's the opportunity to create these narrower, smaller paths adjacent to that. And on those paths, we could even integrate some optional mountain bike features or some exercise equipment like a pull-up bar or a bench that you could do push-ups on. The idea being providing a varied set of experiences where people can get some exercise and get out into nature. Before I go further in this, let me go back a step and just say what we're trying to achieve with this nature scheme. Since Crescent City has such amazing natural resources, access to the redwood forest, Elk Creek, the bay, the harbor itself, and the Pacific Ocean, what we want to do with this scheme is provide opportunities for people who live in Crescent City and visitors to connect with nature. So that's the focus of this scheme and every piece of it. So you'll see there's rich planting, a very thick tree planting, both along Front Street and on this central spine of the park. There's also a lot of tree planting within the bike park itself, and that's shown in this photo as well. And in all cases, the goal here is to give people the feeling of being immersed in nature, whether you're in the bike park or even whether you're playing soccer on these fields, but you're surrounded by trees on all sides. Next to Front Street, we show a very large community picnic structure and a spill out lawn for people to use. And in this scheme, rather than having a paved area for community gatherings as a plaza, we have a grass area, which would be more similar to how the park is used for gatherings today. This section of the park between Play Street and Front Street focuses on play. So existing play area Kidstown here, and we're proposing 2 new play areas shown at 9 and 8. And these would be nature-focused play, both for toddlers and for older kids. So incorporating logs and climbing structures made of natural materials, both providing things that toddlers can explore and also providing big, challenging, exciting features that could be used by older kids. Next to the Visitors Center, we have number 14, the Memorial Clearing. And that's an area surrounded by trees with an elliptical path. And along that path are organized all the memorials of the park. So that's kind of a contemplative area where visitors to the park can travel along that path and learn more about the history of the park, as well as the existing cultures of Crescent City. Also, I think there's an opportunity at that location next to the Visitors Center to speak to the natural context of this park and to engage people with nature, connecting to Elk Creek, as well as connecting to the ocean and to the redwoods. At number 5 here is a braided path system, and that's passing through a botanical garden style planting, highlighting trees and understory plants that are native to this region, and especially looking at trees and plants that have cultural uses. Adjacent to this at number 19 is a tiered amphitheater with integrated seating, and that's shown in this photograph here. And rather than having a hard built amphitheater, what we're proposing here is a graded lawn that would have a slight rise for the stage and a slight rise for the seating. So it would function as an amphitheater while still working in this natural environment, also with views out to the bay. One element I forgot to mention earlier is marked at number 3 here, which is a senior exercise bosque. A bosque is just a grid of trees, and the idea here would be exercise equipment, especially exercise equipment tailored towards seniors and older adults, that would be in an accessibly surfaced area, but covered with tree canopy. To finish up this scheme, I'll just point out the smaller courts located here, some walking paths off the main spine, an area for water sports rentals to connect with the natural systems of the bay and the beach, some obstacle course features similar to like a Spartan race type of obstacle course, and finally a bouldering wall. So this boulder here would be a place where kids could play as well as rock climbers could practice their rock climbing. And then the final big feature of this scheme is number 23 here, which is a boardwalk arching out over Elk Creek. And this boardwalk would provide an overlook to look at Elk Creek and to look out at the Crescent City Harbor. And it also has an arm that comes down and ramps down to land on the beach, providing an accessible route to the beach. So you could stand on this and look out. We imagine interpretive signage on here, as well as maybe binoculars to look at wildlife on Elk Creek or out in the harbor. And we also show at number 24 a possible seasonal bridge crossing Elk Creek. So I'm going to pass it back to Kathy to recap the three schemes.
So that was a romping tour through the three schemes. We're so looking forward to your thoughts and comments. We really believe that everybody's input will make this the best thing it can be. And so with that, obviously, you can see that there's different priorities. And also, we've broken them out thematically to really allow us to explore an idea in each scheme. But they're ultimately, at the end of the day, what we really see is that preferred elements will probably be married together so that we actually get the best of all possible schemes. So with that, I'm happy to open it to question and answer. And that's great. The poll is up there. People have preferences, and we'll see where that goes. So I did see some comments in the chat bar about questions. There was a question about the size of the labyrinth. Obviously, we're open to guidance and input, but in the order of 40-foot diameter, it's a good-sized one. Labyrinths are usually defined by the number of circles that they have, and 11 is on the large end, and that's what we had in mind. I also saw a question about the number of bathrooms. In option A, there's the existing bathroom plus 2 more. And in option B, I believe there's 2, but Mark, please correct me if I'm off there. And in option C, which is the nature one, there's the existing bathroom number 10. And that would be, there would be an additional larger bathroom near the community picnic structure right there. So all have an improvement to the existing bathroom, and all have additional new bathrooms.
So at this time, if anyone would like to raise their hand to ask any questions of Mark or Kathy, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll allow you the opportunity to ask that question. Or if you'd like to type it in the chat or in the question box, we can address any questions or take any feedback that you'd like to provide us right now. So we have one comment in the chat. Would the mature design be the most labor intensive in regards to upkeep in the nature option?
Gee, that's a really good question. There are more trees in the nature option, but it's not only trees that need care. A park that is richly developed will need some maintenance. And we've had conversations with the city about maintenance and also about programming. You know, they go hand in hand. To make it a really attractive place, you need to take care of it. And in fact, some of the overarching comments that were had by community input during the earlier input meetings or engagement, there were really 5 main topics, and one of them was maintenance concerns of features that are already there, features that people really like and want to keep, but they're not in very good shape, like the bathroom. Another one was security, and another one was programming. And so, you know, all of those things speak one way or another to care and maintenance. And Holly may want to speak to it too, but the city's committed to this being not just a fantastic amenity for the city, but a regionally important place. The disc golf attracts people from interstate, far and wide, and it should not only be as good as it is now, it should be even better. And there's every opportunity for that. We've spoken with the disc golf guys, and they see ways to do that, and I think hand in hand that will happen. So I think there needs to be a city commitment, and my understanding is that's on its way.
Yeah, just to touch on that very briefly, when the city moved forward with this, they hired myself as the new Director of Recreation with the hopes that we will be able to do events which increase the sales tax and TOT tax to our community, which will give us the funding to help move forward in this way that we're doing currently. You know, we had a lot of people come through our community this summer and realize how beautiful it is. And we really think that's going to keep going. This will just have them staying in our community for a little longer. That summer season will really give the city the revenue and the means to be able to do this. We're also working on other items to help with the upkeep of the community and Measure S. If you're interested, you could go to the city's website and learn a little bit about that as well. But Kathy is absolutely correct. The city is committed to this, and we're really hoping to get your guys' feedback. A couple questions in the chat real quick. What is the geometric design in the center of the recreation design?
That is the plaza, the main sort of town square, if you will, for a range of different uses, but the design is actually derived from some of the patterns of the Tolowa people. So in terms of, you know, how to integrate language and broader understanding of things cultural, that's one of the ways to do it, and that's a paving pattern.
And just to touch on real quick, Mark and Kathy spent time meeting with both culture committees from both Tolowa Dene Nation and Elk Valley Rancheria to make sure we're being sensitive and thoughtful and got input from them for these designs right now. Another question is, are there cost estimates connected to these options? Not right now. That's not part of this stage of it. We will have that later on in this process, and we'll share those at city council meetings and other things. So really be part of that conversation a little bit later. There's another question. Were there discussions about food forest and permaculture options?
About, I missed the first word.
Food forest.
Oh, food forest. Yeah, absolutely. And permaculture. We actually have not discussed permaculture in the park, but we have discussed the idea of plants of utility. We have mostly been looking at them from a Tolowa point of view, but plants of utility are certainly part of the idea of interpretive and educational use, certainly of other cultures. We don't, however, currently see it as, for want of a better word, a farm. And so that's not been part of the program to date. It certainly could be if there was a broader interest, but food production on a small scale and really more about educational and interpretive uses. And in fact, plants growing not just for food production in that sense, but also for, you know, the kinds of things you might need to make baskets or fishing nets or other things like that.
Another question is, can we have a little bit of each option?
Yes, we can. We can have it all. Well, I don't know that we can have it all, but we can certainly marry elements from different options. For instance, if you were to take the focus on culture, I think the cultural core is a series of elements that hang together pretty nicely. Their form may change, but their concept is a sort of it's got a nice series of different facets to it. The recreational one, I think, is very tight in terms of its and elegant in the way that it fits together and allows for both a great many activities, but also picnicking at all parts of the park, at the northwest corner, down by the water on Howe Drive, and then also at the corner where it turns into Elk Creek, and then even further up towards the visitor center. So there's a range of different sort of passive and active uses. And those two could marry very well. Likewise, I think that this sense of the relationship with nature and the sorts of attitudes and attention that the Scheme 3 shows towards Elk Creek and the focus on looking out to the water to understand it in water sports, and perhaps the braided path system might also be integrated. So, and then I'm sure there are other versions of integration, but that's just as an illustration. Mark, do you have things to add to that?
No, I think that's a great point. And I think, for example, some of these elements, like a focus on the cultural history of the place, we feel committed to integrating into whichever scheme we do. So really the goal in separating them isn't to say only this scheme will have culture. It's really to say, if we put as our top priority celebrating and interpreting cultures, this is where we would land. And yeah, we can pick and choose from the options that we showed today.
I want to touch on real quickly, everyone. There's a lot of questions in the question as well as the chat. If we don't get to yours, don't worry. We're taking a copy of all of these and we'll type out answers as well. So don't worry, you can put more questions or comments in there. And if we don't get to them now, we'll make sure to get to them at some point and post them to Facebook as well as the city webpage. We have a question. Are there differences in year-over-year sustainability costs?
That is a very good question. Measuring sustainability is actually a very complicated thing, and monitoring it. But in terms of the sorts of things that we'll be looking at, obviously carbon sequestration and energy use, respectful use of natural resources, building and designing for durability so that the embodied energy of the elements, it remains useful for a long period of time. So as to the cost of that, it is actually rather a squirrely thing. And I would say that the three schemes are fairly comparable because it's really more about intensity of use. I would say that the nature scheme is probably a little less intensively used. So if anyone, that would be the more economical in terms of capital costs, but then there's, obviously there will be ongoing life cycle costs. So I'm afraid I don't have a very firm answer for that. And I think it's because it is quite hard to define and to put your hands around the whole scheme. But in terms of the payback that you get for sustainability, I think it actually, the presence of the park itself is important because it's protecting the town. We know that in the earlier tsunami, it just washed right into town because it didn't have a means of stopping it. And these additional plantings, for instance, will be a means of protecting the town. So, the aspects of sustainability, if there are particular aspects that the individuals are interested in, we'd love to hear about it. Yeah.
One of the questions was, is there parking near the launching area for the kayaks?
Mark, I'm going to let you go for that one.
Yeah, so parking, our goal is to provide parking for all of the additional features that we're providing. I think in terms of what's shown on this plan, we don't show parking specifically for that kayak launch area, but if that survives into the final iteration, we will propose parking adjacent to it.
All right, and let's see, we had someone say, I voted for the cultural option while the nature option is also very attractive. So I appreciate an integration of the Taloa EVR and Yurok tribal history and current work of each government. Yeah, we're definitely going to be working with our tribal governments moving forward with this and partnering with them as best we can. So we're excited about that. Let's see. What about making the plaza area in B design as the labyrinth? It could work for both as designed for the labyrinth is flat and concrete.
That's very true. It could. It might be one of the biggest labyrinths around, and that might be very appealing. I'm just measuring it. It's just shy of 200 feet across, so maybe 180 feet across. So it would be a very big labyrinth, but it certainly could be. I think of labyrinths I know of in civic squares in cities in Europe, and it's usually a portion of the civic square, not the whole civic square. But it's something that could be considered. My experience with labyrinths is that they generally, even the bigger ones, generally tend to be, around 50 feet or a little bit less.
Another question, thinking of the wind and how it impacts our area of California, there was one question about maybe the amphitheater behind a tree wall rather than exposed on the ocean side. And then there was another comment about, are there, along with the wind component as well and coverage and safety, are there covered picnic areas in only certain options or in all the options?
Both good questions. Let's start with the amphitheater, and that is a great question. Our primary thinking with the amphitheater was that it is a potential for a source of maybe amplified sound. We don't know yet whether it be amplified or not, but if it was, if it throws its sound towards the town, it probably wants to be set back from the town a bit. If it faces away, if the stage faces away from the town, then there's probably much more option there. And if you look at scheme one, the culture one, there's a large trellis and there's a small number of trees. So minimal protection from a line of trees. If you look at recreation, the continuous line of trees that is on the land side of Howe Drive would provide a substantial amount of protection for that. And perhaps with that thought in mind, we might actually look at seeding it deeper into the side a little bit to increase that protection. And in the nature option, it's actually got the stage facing the northwest with a big backdrop of vegetation. So that would be a breezy spot, that would be not the most protected. We did speak with the disc golf guys, and a couple of them said, wow, this is one breezy course you time when you play because it gets breezy at particular times of the day. That said, another said, that makes this one of the most challenging courses around, and it attracts people far and wide to be able to play such a hard course. And so while that may not apply directly to amphitheater design, it certainly, it is an innate quality of this site, and we want to use it where we can, and we want to protect from it where it makes sense. The question about picnic structures, if you look at scheme A, the culture scheme, there is a number of, so Mark is showing the main covered sort of group picnic area. So that is a protective roof. It's a large scale trellis. There's also the trellis at the Seaport Plaza. And then there's a number of smaller square elements, which are picnic enclosures for, a family group or a group of friends. And they are both within grassy areas, you can see there at 23 on the lower right, but also up by the kids' play areas. So you might go to the park with the kids and then have a picnic afterwards. There's a number of picnic structures. If you look at scheme B, the recreation one, there are a number of picnic structures at 24 there, just to the south, to the east of Stamps Way. And also in area 5 where there's a picnic area, and that's sort of more Tolowa focused, but there's also picnic opportunities there. And if we look at scheme C, there's a very substantial picnic structure, of course, for a community group, a Boy Scout group, or a weekend celebration of disc golf, and people come from far and wide. So there's a range of different experiences, whether we're looking at smaller scale or the larger scale.
All right, and another question about our fabulous weather here in Northern California, that irrigation is an issue. So I'm assuming there will be irrigation to keep all the vegetation alive. So will it be the gray water from the sewage treatment plant that was in the operational and funding contracts for the sewage treatment plant? I'm not really sure about that question, but can you address irrigation as well as the drainage and rain flow patterns here, and if you've taken that into consideration with these designs?
Starting with irrigation, we agree. Certainly irrigation is going to be of value for year-round benefit, particularly at the sport fields. But I think generally, and we may elect to not irrigate some areas, that'll be a choice. And that's something we would work with the city over, and also the community, of course. But we've worked with various cities, and some people love to irrigate, and others, like to let some see the seasonal change. Perhaps if we were to go primarily with a nature scheme, there may be less irrigation, for instance. As to whether we would use gray water, we would love to. We have in-house irrigation experts in my office. It's a little bit more fine-grained than the nature of master planning, but the things to look at for gray water, of course, is to separate it from potable water, absolutely clearly, and also to make sure that you do a regular chemical analysis so that you don't get a buildup, not of anything that's dangerous to people, but of things that make plants not prosper. So, for instance, if there was a locally high boron level, over time the trees would start to falter. And so that's just something to watch. Some areas that have reclaimed water or gray water use it for particular seasons, and then they cut the use of it before the end of the winter so that the natural clean rainwater can flush it out and you don't get a buildup. So there's ways of managing that too. The other question was, prompt me again, if you will, Holly.
Drainage in the park.
Drainage and water, yeah.
And rain flow patterns and how that works in the park.
Yes, so this is really part of being wise and sustainable, capturing rain and flowing it through vegetated surfaces so that you get maximum percolation. And it not only allows the water to return to the land, but it also cleans it before it percolates and becomes part of the groundwater. Of course, here we're right on the edge of the ocean, and we have brackish water at Elk Creek and salt water at the ocean front. And so ensuring that we've got, clean rainwater running into the ground is a good thing. What we don't know too much about right now is what the basis of the park is. We do know that it was a gentle slope before the 1960 tsunami, and now, of course, it's built up. So it's been probably built up with construction rubble as part of the cleanup, but also, so it's probably very quick draining, but how does it actually drain? And we want to make sure that it's not going to be leaching anything unpleasant into the waterways. So using the seasonal rains to our advantage, and also understanding that rain comes and we should capture it and use it where we can. So we also, as we would drill down into the design, would look at cisterns and possibly capturing it for irrigation.
All right, we have a couple more questions. Great questions, everybody. We're loving this. This is an anonymous attendee, but from your perspective as planning and design professionals, what is the essence, meaning, reason for being of this area park site? So, and
Mark may want to chime in on this too. So that's a very good question. What is the essence of this place? What is the zeitgeist? What is its reason for being here? Well, it's got an unusual history in that it is actually entirely man-made, but it's surrounded by fantastic nature. And so I think the focus of, the place of Crescent City, it needs to really represent Crescent City to the county, to the region, to the state, and to the broader community. And it does, as Mark mentioned in some of his presentation, have this extraordinary dialogue between not just fantastic trees, but some of the most remarkable trees on Earth, and that they come down to, one of the major oceans on Earth. And so there's this extraordinary nexus. So to my mind, it's celebrating that. And then that is a layer along with all of these rich amenities, a place for people to come and be community. This is the place, this is the living room, not just of Crescent City, but for occasionally for visitors, it's going to be their living room too, and to really celebrate that seasonal quality. Mark,
absolutely. I would just add that another really central idea I see in this entire process is this really high level of community involvement in the park. Everything from how Kidstown was built with contributions from the community, how this process is going, the level of kind of commitment and connection and involvement that I've seen from community groups on this project is really exceptional. People really feel connected with this place, feel willing to invest their time like all of you are tonight. So I think the way that this is built as a community and the way that it serves the community is really going to be what makes this place unique and special.
You know what, right there's a couple more questions. One was about signage, and yes, signage is going to be a big component. That is a major important part of this. We're going to have signage at the entrances for certain. But I think this is a wonderful time. We want to be very sensitive of your guys' commitment to this process and us being true to that hour mark. And we are at that hour mark right now. So I want to just say thank you to Mark and Kathy for all fielding all these questions. And like I said, if we didn't get to your question, you can email me, and you can also, we're going to go to a screen here. There is a survey that we're hoping each and every one of you fills out. You have the option to do the survey as a family group. If you're a teacher or an educator, you can do it as in a classroom setting. If you are a group like the Labyrinths or Disc Golf group, you guys can do that together as that option as well. What I want to talk about is our timeline. COVID put us a little behind the ball of what we had hoped and presented to you before, but we are nonetheless on track for moving forward for grant applications and meeting deadlines, and we're excited about that. So community input, the survey, and any input that we want to get to Mark and Kathy, we're going to end that on Monday. That gives you time to share. This video will be posted on YouTube. If you think there are critical people that didn't see it, you can direct them to YouTube and the survey, and we'd love their feedback, and they can hear everything that you just were able to hear from Mark and Kathy. But we really need that in by the 10th so that these lovely people and their team down in Oakland with PGA Design can get us a draft of the preferred plan. We have to take that to the Planning Commission and then to City Council. And then hopefully we'll have a plan that everyone can be proud of and had voice in for December. We have a grant application we're already working on that we want to get in by the 14th of December for Prop $68. And we are going for the big pot of money of $8 million. And because of all the input we've gotten from the community, the wonderful work, having the blessings of working with our tribal governments, we're really hoping that we get that $8 million to get this project going. So with that, the most important thing we can ask of you guys to do right now is go to the Crescent City website and go to the link and do the survey. Like I said, there's a variety of ways that you can do that survey. You can do it as a group, as a family, as a teacher. But really, the more information we get from there, the more help Mark and Kathy and their team have. I'm also putting that link in the chat box right there so that you can actually just click on that as you leave here and go straight to that survey to complete it. So with that, Mark, Kathy, is there anything you'd like to add or say?
I would just add that I think the boards are up at various community events, the farmers market maybe next week, or Holly, I think you were shopping it around in various locations at the park along Howe Drive.
Yeah, actually, thank you for reminding me that, Kathy. The boards with the large posters of the 3 alternatives will be in Beachfront Park this weekend. Also, we want to remind you guys that this weekend is Sea Cruise, and the boards will be down there as well. So you can actually physically go down into Beachfront Park with your family, by yourself, as you're walking your dog, to walk around and check out the boards with it and kind of get a feel of what that might be like here in your park. So those boards will be down there, as well as down there for Sea Cruise as well. So we're looking for more feedback. And if you want them bigger to really see, that's a great way to do it.
I would also like to just echo Mark's comments that this has been an absolutely exemplary example of seeking community input and helping the myriad of strands come together. And I think the city's done a spectacular job at it. It's been a pleasure. It continues to be a pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for that. Please give your feedback and reach out to me if you have any questions or direct concerns as well. hwendt@crescentcity.org. And thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.